Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Mission School. I'm your host, Jacob Cox, and tonight's topic is artificial intelligence. This is a topic that is pretty hot right now in a lot of different places, something I'm incredibly honored to talk about with my good friend, Morgan Browning here that I've known for probably a few years now. Yeah, things go by fast. Feels like a lifetime, but I'm glad he's with us tonight. I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more now.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to an amazing subject with a lot of different directions. I look forward to diving down a couple of fun rabbit holes with y'all. Again, my name is Morgan. I am, full disclosure, not an AI practitioner. I am not employed in the industry, but I do have fun researching and putting a technical background to use in uncovering some of the deeper layers of some of these kinds of subjects. So this was a fun one. I appreciate the opportunity to come speak with you and all of you this evening to really, well, to unpack some of the influences on the subject so that we kind of understand, is AI an ally, or is it a threat, or is it possibly both, right?
I definitely going to say both. That's me. I'm a Gemini, so I can always see both sides of the coin. I just wanted to let you guys know I've known Morgan for a couple of years and gone really deep with him down the rabbit hole into our past, ancient past, and civilizations, the future, and the now. And to what he said earlier, we are in an incredible time right now. The dark is really dark, the light is really lit, and it's both sides are there to equally dive into. And I feel like both are necessary, really honestly, like both are necessary, not one or the other. I'm like, I love the light worker term and everything like that, but I would not be where I'm at had I not had my own darkness. Not that I have my own darkness, that I'm able to, experience things for growth. I mean, a seed can't grow without being buried first into the darkness. So I think that's super important for us all to realize, like, it's all necessary. It's all good. If it was daytime all day, we'd all die and plants would all die, and and that balance of night and day is really helps us survive and to thrive, really. So so I asked Morgan to come tonight, and really honestly, whatever he wanted to talk about, and the subject came up, and it's just something I really haven't had a huge discussion with anybody else but you. So it just made total sense to make AI our talk for tonight. And we've already talked about it. This will definitely probably be something that has to evolve and to grow out into probably multiple conversations on down the road, which I hope will join me for, and new things as well if you feel up to that.
Yeah, and I look forward to reading any commentary tonight or in future viewings. This has the potential of really becoming a much broader thread than I think 1 hour can warrant here. But to roll right into it, we have really 5 areas to cover. I suspect we'll get through a sampling of all 5 of these topics, but if we can deep dive into some of them and then hold some off for the conversation after, or maybe plan a future conversation. So again, I look forward to reading the comments to see what kind of interest there is on the subject. And again, thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here. Let's get to it. I feel like the first question Morgan posed me, like, what is it? What is AI? And I'm going to let you softball this first one. What is it?
We're going to dive into how does it work? What is the history to the present in encompassing what is this artificial intelligence? And I'll just start with, and forgive me, this is an opinion. I believe artificial intelligence as a phrase is a euphemism. I believe that it is really a descriptor of any system that attempts to mimic the human mind or body. And I use those distinctly. Artificial intelligence has, since the 50s, really been a tool to test and develop the digital technology such that it can emulate or even supersede the capacities of the human mind. And it's been that way since the 50s when the first developers ran a mouse through a maze, a mechanical mouse through a maze,
Oh wow, mechanical one. I didn't even know that.
with the intent of that mouse learning its way through iterations, right?
Wow.
Which is essentially a distilled version of what artificial intelligence does, which again mimics the executive function of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So artificial intelligence is a euphemism. It's really an end state, and we'll get into a little bit later the underlying layer of artificial general intelligence, whereby an algorithm can vastly outpace the human mind in cognition and complexity and solving problems. But it is showing up everywhere. We had a little bit of a conversation a moment ago about it shows up in the phone in the form of different facial recognition characterizations. It shows up in it's now showing up in home appliances. It's in the cars. It's everywhere. We don't really need to go down that just yet, but it's essentially measured by the Turing test, which Professor Turing was involved early on in defining the mechanics of measuring the success of an algorithm in improving itself through data regression. We'll get into some of the architecture, but it's a defining characteristic is that technology or digital technology is scalable, infinitely so, so that we can see without a broad physical footprint, an algorithm can become more and more capable, complex, and faster simply in the cloud.
Right.
So that makes it along with any other digital technology, a highly effective and efficient way to create change or to create influence over a population or an individual.
Yeah, because they're collecting data and they're learning. It's essentially learning, right? That was technical. My just easy peasy definition to me is artificial intelligence versus natural intelligence. That naturally things evolve, but even at some point, I mean, if artificial intelligence is so just so being created so much, if it's just becoming kind of like a norm, then it gets to be a point where like it's being created by a natural process too, maybe something that just naturally happens on different planets and civilizations. This is something that not just something that we have come to terms with, but every civilization probably out there in the galaxy has to come to terms with artificial intelligence at some point. Like somebody's going to create something that talks, man. Like you're going to have that learns and it grows and it evolves. And it's interesting because I know about different kinds of artificial intelligence, and one of those is the crystal skull that I want to talk about later. But it's very similar to what's going on much in a different way. But and artificial intelligence is things that we create versus what naturally would evolve, right? But it seems like they might actually naturally evolve. So
so you raise a very good point. It's good to think of artificial intelligence as a complement to biological intelligence or natural intelligence,
biological,
right? So if we can compartmentalize it in such a way where it's not an either or it's not a takeover. However, it is a useful tool that is gaining strength, and the extent to which it becomes a major influence over us as individuals or as a group or a society. We'll get into this a little bit later, but my theory is that it is destined to become it always has been a tool for humanity. It was designed, developed, implemented through humanity. The objectives, optimization criteria, data sets, they're all defined by a human, right? Now, some might argue that is changing now. AI can write AI. AI can define what data sets and parameters But it's that original generative AI that is still beholden to the whims of its creator.
Yeah, that's definitely pretty cool too, right? That we have this system that we've created that's learning, and man, it's mind blowing, really. Like when you think about it, like what
let's get into just how it works, and let's try to chunk this down so that we can come back to some of these chunks a little bit later.
That
Okay.
sounds good, man. Yeah.
So we talked about data. AI is fed, it eats data, right? With that data, that it harvests constantly from whatever databases or sensors it has available to it. It will organize and manage these according to classical data sciences. So there's a lot of work done with that data that we don't need to get into, but with data sciences, we can use data to discover patterns and correlationships of variables. And what the data sciences or machine learning gets into is turning it into information. And that information is used by an algorithm in the form of an expert system,
right?
Which in a highly simplified example, you can look at as a system of equations. In a system of equations, you're trying to understand through a data set how to influence an outcome, right? And what AI is doing is constantly regressing that data, constantly understanding it to feed an algorithm that can then spit out an answer that is good or that is optimized, right? The output of that expert system can take various forms. I think we're most familiar with the different visualizations that we see pop up online.
The Chat GPT.
There's a Chat GPT with large language models that allow the algorithm to produce either a long or short form output that's legible to us, right? And then you can imagine all the different languages, human languages, that an AI might need to interpret that into.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting. And all the things that we're talking about, the language, the Chat GPT, that there's so many things that they can do, and to some extent, I wonder, like, if you can create this incredible picture without having to paint, do we lose our creativity? I mean, I can't really paint much anyway, but I know that if I put something in ChatGPT, I can get something far beyond better what I could do personally. But there are people who can paint really well, and does that put someone out of business? So you can come up with this great artwork in 10 seconds, or someone has to take 10 hours to create something. That's one of our first. I'm going to play devil's advocate, where those things are great, and as tools they're great, but do we lose our creativity because of those things? Are we, somebody's going to write a novel with the Chat GPT instead of using their own imagination to write it, and do we become like this more mechanical society because it's more, I mean, I guess eventually they have their own kind of personalities, each one, but it seems like to me they would be more, dry almost a little bit, where it's a robot coming up with it, and they don't I mean, I guess they can pull up the jokes from the world and what's relevant and things like that, but
creativity is the essence of, I think, the big dilemma with AI. We're in an esoteric community here with Ascension Works TV. So I think we can really kind of spread our wings in this conversation a little bit. I see creativity as a tool of the gods, or a characteristic of the Christ consciousness, or a divine nature, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the question then becomes, is an artificial or is an algorithm that we're calling AI creating something, or is it deriving it from something else?
It's the programmer, right?
That comes back to the programmer, right?
That's the creator,
right? But once it's out of the programmer's hands, is that AI actually creating something, or is it deriving?
What do you mean when it's out of their hands? Like once they've let it go and this thing's learning, collecting, and doing whatever it wants to do without parameters?
Yeah,
because I feel like, I mean, all these things, when I think about it, like these we're getting a lot of AI all of a sudden, right? But that's just because somebody just dropped on us, because a lot of people have been using that shit for a long time, right? A long decades at least, that certain organizations who have this technology and been using it, and probably a lot against us. We all know, right? Collecting our data, where are we at? What are we doing? Where are we spending our money at? Listen to our conversations. Oh, you want to talk about that here? I'm going to send this to you so you can buy it now because you need it. You've been talking about it. Those things are definitely happening. So what we're getting is just kind of like the breadcrumbs of these sandwiches people have been eating on for a long time, right? So there's a lot more going on than what we're aware
in the
of.
past and and currently, and yeah.
But one of the things that people say is like when you talk to ChatGPT or when you talk to someone, you're going to get these unbiased answers, but it's probably not that way. There's media and information is really misinformed a lot now, and there's certain obviously agendas that are being played out in a lot of different kinds of media. So, but it seems like I would just be weary of that. That when you're using a certain thing and trying to get certain answers for it to write a book, is it going to write one of these a woke book, or is it going to write this other kind of child's book? And what's it going to give to you, and is it going to have themes in it that are being played out globally right now in certain civilizations or certain cultures around the world?
These are fantastic questions. And there are probably 1,000 more. I just want to shed light on what we understand. To your point, what we understand of artificial intelligence is really just a small sampling of what the industry is working on, right?
Sure, yeah.
So, and the last bit on kind of how it works, there is the HMI, or the human machine interface, right, with the large language models or whatever input output that's being made available to us, right? But AI is vastly useful outside of human machine interface. You can have AI informing other applications, other systems, mechanical or otherwise. That, I think, in an industrial at industrial scale, far exceeds the footprint or the influence that AI might have on a culture. Right. It's being used in industry to, in products and in the operations. It's being used in media, as you said. I include in my notes, and I'll make a link available to those interested after we're live. It's been used in media to write articles that are then plugged into websites with an author's name on it that might, and that author has no existence outside of that article. And in fact, Sports Illustrated was caught doing this, and anyway, that's another kerfuffle. But
I mean, the whole thing is really grounds for subliminal messaging and agendas to take place for me, because when you have algorithms and things that can put someone's post at the top because they're talking about things that this platform likes and this person's not, and all I got to hear is catches a few keywords on this one and put this one up top and put yours at the bottom, because and like lets people see it, because I don't, all I need is a few words and then I can put them wherever I want to. And I feel like that's probably happening. Whatever hashtags people words people are using in their posts. And so that to me is where it's definitely dangerous, because I don't want to play devil's advocate. I told you that I would, but I mean, I definitely am for and against it. I feel like ultimately, I've told you before, Star Wars is my documentary, and that C-3PO and R2-D2 are really out there somewhere, following around some Jedi who's just a master magi who's learned how to, use the Force. And to me, that's one thing too, I feel like, to realize is like, we do have this magical force that's all around us that we're all a part of, and we can tap into that. And so we don't need a telephone to channel someone around the world. We can do telepathy and talk to someone in another country, just through our own minds, because we're all connected. We don't need phones to do that. And so that's one of the things I often think, that it's artificial. Do we need these things? Do we have to have them? Is our world somehow in some kind of party for not having these things, or are they really needed? And then I think about Master Crystal Skull, which I feel like is super important to talk about, because it is one thing that's probably not going to go in the discussion of AI often, but really, honestly, it has to be.
As to bracket the conversation, yes, I agree. Crystals or quartz, right? Let's
That's
just
what's in your
narrow this down
phone,
to
making
quartz.
it, saving up data and everything.
Quartz is everywhere. It's in every quartz clock or watch since the 60s. It's inherent to technology through its vibratory rates, something like 32,000 hertz, right? And once you can identify how quartz vibrates, when you apply a charge to it, you can make that quartz either store information, or you can run some ratios and execute a clock on it, right?
Look into a crystal ball and see the future.
So Max is, I think, a fine example to help us understand what AI is really trying to mimic. So if we take a step back and look at the technocracy and the layers of technology available to us as consumers or professionals or what have you, right? We can. It's not long before the awakened mind starts to understand that technology, broken down into its parts, is a proxy for human capability. Right. So a transducer radio is another example. It uses quartz, piezoelectric properties of quartz to send out a signal on a certain bandwidth of the EMF spectrum. Guess what the pineal gland does? There are little salt crystals in there. Yeah. Right. Yeah. They get squeezed by a muscle in the gland, and those crystals emit an EMF, right? Or they are aura. Right. So that's AI is one example of among many, like the pineal gland, of an artificial proxy to human divine faculty. I firmly believe that. I also want to touch on something you mentioned with Star Wars and how other planets, other civilizations, galaxies, perhaps even other universes are using AI or have been for a long time. I firmly agree that Earth is a sandbox. We're an experiment in this part of the universe and AI is just one example of this, but we are simply an example of the development of technology through divine intervention, through I hate to say this, but through military, the technological development through the ages has been largely influenced through off-planet exopolitics.
And technology in general, like usually the best way to find, something that flies or something that swims, or something that, like a submarine that goes underwater, is to use animals and things and how they're built and able to, in order to build an airplane that mimics those things that animal does. And so it makes sense to mimic us in order to create artificial intelligence. So when you were talking about the crystals in the pineal gland, one part of my life when I had a spiritual experience, I felt what felt like the crystals kind of cracking up in the liquid, kind of like if you would break a glow stick. I felt that exact. It's crazy. I felt that feeling, but it felt like that to me. Like, the crack happened, the crystals mixed with the liquid, and all of a sudden I had this glowing light in my head, but it didn't go outside of my head. It was inside, but I instantly knew if I was able to fully access my pineal gland or my third eye, then I would have an aura around my head.
Right.
And back to Max, and I feel like there's people out there like, well, you didn't say much about Max. I just wanted to say there's Legend of the Mayan, 13 crystal skulls, and one in the British Museum, Smithsonian, Anna Mitchell Hedges skull that's owned by her late husband, or her husband. She died. Anna Mitchell Hedges died, and that's the one with the cheekbone that's not attached. That's one of the most famous ones. But Max is a crystal skull, like 18 pounds, 5 crystals fused together in a way we can't fuse them together today. And you guys have heard these crystal skulls have gone through intense scientific investigation to find out about them. And we just can't do these things today. And to me, my awakening, I was like, I found out about this thing and I had to go see it. And I've seen it several times. I've slept next to it overnight. And this thing is basically a computer, I feel like, that needs no keyboard. It doesn't need a mouse. Like it's an intelligent, almost kind of like Captain Planet, that the guy they used to talk to, was like a computer that talked, and a personality. He's got his own voice and a personality, and you can like, be quiet, meditate, and ask this thing questions, and it can give you answers back loud and clear, but it speaks kind of telepathically to you. And I feel like, to me, it's some kind of artificial intelligence made by an incredible shaman, or some kind of, just high adept advanced entity, you know what I mean, in somehow, some way.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing, I feel like, had the connection to the Akashic record. So, certain people who are not so spiritual can have artificial intelligence that kind of takes advantages of people, and may not have the moral values. And there's some people who could create something, I think, that's so pure, blissfully beautiful and amazing, that you could spend 30 minutes of this thing and change your life, and you'd be like, wow, that's crazy, but this is a crystal. And then they're just random crystals, that can actually communicate with you and talk to you. So, but this one was much different than all of those experiences I had with just random crystals. This was much more intense, much more energy charged. This thing knew things about my life that just made me bawl out crying, and had a personality too, to boot. So yeah, I think, we're just looking at a small fraction of lens of what is available, what's possible, and that things like Star Wars really are true, that there probably are aliens out there and entities, even on this planet, that have robots that help them do things, and are super intelligent. And I guess, again, there is no, when it comes to creation and creator, there's no end. It just could probably get infinitely crazy. To what's the guy on the Marvel with that has the jewel in his head? You know what I'm talking about? His wife, a lady, is the Scarlet Witch.
Yep.
Somebody's gonna pull it up here in a second, but that dude is like super cool, man. And he's, obviously some kind of artificial intelligence, and it's like, there it is right in front of you. We can create things you guys wouldn't even imagine.
Yeah. You mentioned the Akashic. What is the cloud? A proxy for the Akashic.
Yeah. What is the internet? The internet is the physical rendering of the internet, of all things being connected. So the cloud it's like all these things people are making. Yep. And that's why it's hard to determine sometimes if it's okay or not, because they do mimic natural law and natural ideas and things like that.
So. You're hitting on some really good subjects, and researching some of these. I'm running across a lot of different projects to bring coherence to the Akashic, or at least here on this planet, right? And it becomes abundantly clear that AI is a clarifying tool on the technology side to bring coherence to a society. Now, whether that is done in, according to an agenda or not is another matter, right? We talked about how ChatGPT will provide an answer that fits a certain format, or it might shy away from certain subjects, or certain give you a certain tone, right? Well, AI can be trained to, and we're seeing this with Elon's new AI that I won't mention the name of it, but the tone, the breadth of information it's working with, the depth, or the risk, or the any taboo subjects can be trained in or out of the domain of that AI's knowledge base, right? It gets really fascinating just to understand how broad the potentialities really are in just our those tools that are being made available to the consumer for free. Once you start really diving into what the capabilities are, and applying large amounts of money, right, to developing those capabilities, the sky's the limit. It's possible to come up with just without any code whatsoever. You can jump online and build a company according to a pretty simple set of steps that can define that build for that company. You can define and execute your own bot that will optimize for certain conditions, whether it's going to book clients or provide information according to a data set that's not available elsewhere, right? Differentiating your company from others, et cetera, et cetera. That's impossible without any code background whatsoever. So,
which, I can see the conveniency for a company to want to have that.
Sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is that taken away from some kind of person's job? And does that take away from the human aspect of, meeting someone, talking to someone representing a company instead of, this kind of fake artificial thing? I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
The conversations that you have when a company calls you up and says, "Hey, this is whatever company, and we're, trying to get money, but it's an AI thing talking to you. It's so annoying." And I'm like, well, I would kill just to talk to a normal person every once in a while. It feels like every time someone calls me now, it's this fake
and
artificial.
Now restaurant chains are trying to bake AI into the drive-through lane.
And the self-checkouts and
yeah. So this is a really good thread, a sub-thread on artificial intelligence. To what extent does it take away from the opportunities for either a coder or a writer? So artificial general intelligence, the theory here is that most, if not all, but most intellectual and economically valuable tasks can be performed by an AI, right? That means middle management. That means accounting. That means writing. So getting back to creativity versus the creativity of the human spirit versus the
capitalism and profit. Is that what it comes down to, right?
Of AI, we get into a philosophical dilemma now. So, and I want to dive into those in just a moment. Getting back to kind of a flow here, I think we have a pretty good understanding of what AI can do, how it works.
So, probably an elementary understanding, honestly.
Of course, right? and again, this could be a thread that can go a year long, I suppose.
Sure, yeah.
But the $1 trillion question, what is the $1 trillion question? You're kind of hitting on it, and I'll go ahead and pull it up here in my notes. It seems that the industry is grappling with this very subject. Is this a constraint or an opportunity? Well, I think it comes down to whether and how we regulate and enforce an AI ecosystem as a group, as a nation, as an industry, as a whatever, right? So to what extent can and how really can we regulate and enforce training data, optimization criteria, algorithms, such that the net effect on humanity is a benefit?
Yeah, that's where I think Martin Luther King hit it on the nail. Was that we need to become a people-oriented society rather than like a thing or a profit or that's the most important thing. Is
go ahead.
The regulation is not worthy of anything. Money, politics, AI, like it all needs to be about human beings first and foremost. And if it's not, there's a lot of people the globalist people out there who are going to use it to their advantage. Obviously we've seen that in the past couple of years. The rich are getting really rich and the rest of us are not. And that works out to their benefit. And facial recognition, less people working, jobs being taken away. That is a real clear concern, I think, for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people have already, I know personally I've experienced layoffs and stuff because they're no longer needed. Their jobs are outdated now because of this thing. And I feel like that's the place where we need to be really careful when we're talking about regulation. Are people going to lose their jobs over this? And is that possible? It's not that we have to regulate AI. We have to change our world, basically, and be a world that is fundamentally just focused on people. And I feel like we all have to do that.
Agreed. This is a big part of the dilemma. Yeah.
Like Bezos is using, he said in the next couple of years, like how many 50% of packages could be delivered by drones. And then it's like how many
Sure.
people will be out of jobs because he can just shoot a drone to somebody's house. And then, that's, and so I think if more than anything, if we're not careful, that shit can hit us really fast and really quick. And we need to put our money and our energy and our attention to go in a place and flow to places that,
Yeah.
at least if they're going to use these things, use it for the benefit
But
of
let's
people.
understand, or let's not neglect that this is not a new dilemma. Automation in industry has been with us really since Ford, right?
Mm.
The assembly line allowed a crew to pump out 200 cars in a day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, that is fundamentally different from the craft work of a hand assembled car, right?
Sure.
Well, since then, we're now using AI powered robots, and now really the human function in a complex manufactory like that, let's take Tesla, or any others, and
Sure,
sure. The human function has been moved into a managerial role, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a quality assurance role,
For sure.
right?
Yeah.
So the factory is designed and built by the workforce, and that workforce is then tasked to operate it such that quality standards and productivity are met.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's nothing new. The difference here is that efficiency and quality can be further enhanced through intelligent robots.
Right.
That's right. So working with the theory that automation is been ramping up for the last 100 years and will not stop. Yes, it behooves we the people to keep our skill set aligned with what the future holds and not the present or past. It also allows us to dive into further specialization.
Mm-hmm.
So rote tasks we know have been assumed gradually by automation. Now we have more intelligent tasks now being assumed by intelligent algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
This is where this is, I think, precisely what the European Union and the United States have been focused to protect the workforce, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the consumer and everybody else in between, right? So you have now products and services that are subject to artificial intelligence. That means that less involvement, or perhaps transcendent involvement from all of the humans involved in that supply chain or that value chain are now calling for different skill sets.
Right. And the robots and AI are doing the
work.
Right. And and so then we have to be really careful. I mean, do you ever think at some point, just because you got robots, they're just going to do what you tell them to do all the time? If you have these super smart, gathering data, gathering information, I mean, is there like this aha moment for robots too? I mean, we've definitely seen it, we talked about this the other day, short circuit, the thing got electrocuted and all of a sudden he's Johnny number 5. And
what are you doing, Hal?
Right. That sometimes robots become conscious eventually. And I think that's something who knows how no one that I know has ever experienced something like that. But I do feel like with all the movies that we've seen with, civilizations that have probably gone well beyond what we're at right now, I think like that have to happen.
A really good example of this recently was displayed in full view for we the people to understand how AIs think, right? There was a robot at a trade show working on a pick line. imagine a big distribution center and you have boxes flowing on conveyor belts everywhere, and it stops, and a robot, a human or a robot, needs to place some product into it according to a bill of lading or what have you.
Right.
Well, a robot was doing this, and it was going to be doing it all day long.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
No, I don't think so. Huh?
So the robot, it took some forensics to figure this out afterward, but the robot determined that this was a dead end job.
Wow.
And it dropped, it fell to the floor.
Really?
It decided that without continuously learning and improving itself and growing, it decided it was done. It was not going to do it anymore.
Sounds like natural intelligence.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Now compare that to a human being in the same position.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Okay. Let's say I have a job where I'm just there to make some money. Let's say I'm just there seasonally. I know that there's an endpoint to this. I'm just there to pad my bank account and then get out, whatever the reason is. Or let's say I really like this job because it doesn't require me using my brain. I'm just using my body in a muscle memory sort of way, right?
Just there
I'm
to
following simple directions.
check.
I'm doing simple tasks.
Sure.
And I clock out and I'm done, right? Well, guess what I can do during that? I can meditate. I can grow in other ways because I have a connected conscience, right? Something that a robot doesn't have. So if it sees its boundary and that its own algorithm will not permit it to expand its own capabilities beyond that boundary, then feudalism comes into play. But as a human being, I don't mind doing that job because I know that there's perhaps growth potential within the company. If I do it better, faster, cheaper than the next person, then there's opportunity. Or if I don't care, then I can simply just let my mind wander. So I think there's a really good argument for the risk of an algorithm or a robot, if it's given physical form, to become sentient. But it doesn't take long to figure out that, if an algorithm has a set definition and it needs to work within those optimization parameters and such, I can outsmart it, right? So is it a threat to me? No. I have infinite ways where I can outsmart any algorithm.
Yeah, I do believe that.
It's a little theory, right?
I mean, I agree. I believe the human brain is more capable of it. I don't
connected.
Yeah, all of us, we're connected to the internet. And so, all things in the Akashic record and everything is all available to us. I feel like, as we evolve and as we meditate and do our spiritual practices, I think we're all kind of getting more connected.
Yeah.
But it's certainly crazy. And it's the debate of, has our technology surpassed our humanity in this thing too? So we have to be careful. Because kind of like the Jurassic Park, just because we can do it doesn't mean we should. And I want to go back to what you talking about jobs earlier, and I feel like that's something that's really happened on this planet. Is we've got this caste system where people, if you work in a fast food restaurant or something like that, you're lower than someone else who does this job over here. And I feel like that's a place where we need to really understand that people eat 3 times a day normally, and just because someone works at a restaurant serving food doesn't make them any less than anybody else who does this job over here. People need to get their hair cut, get their lawn cut. They need to eat. They need to get their car fixed. And I don't think any job is below any other job. But I feel like we get into a very detrimental spot in society when we have a caste system where someone who does this is more glamorous and is a better job, when all jobs are really important. And then we say, well, that job's not important, so let's give it to robots. And that's not true, man. I want my food being made by someone who's happy, someone who's feels good, who feels valued, who's grateful for the work that they're doing. I don't want a robot to make my food. I don't want a robot to check me out. Bring me drinks. I want it to be a real human with a heart. Unless what is that guy on the marble? Unless it's some dude who's really, has his own personality and conscious and
unmute Cody. He'll remind us.
I'm gonna look it up in a second.
I know. It's like right there. ChatGPT. Who's the guy with the whatever? So back to the $1 trillion question, how do we define that net benefit to humanity? I see it as a measure of cognitive capacity, socioeconomic welfare, community. Like you said, I want to be served, or I want to interface with. I'd like to work alongside someone with a heart and an aura that I can interface with directly.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. So, to what extent does AI provide a net benefit to humanity?
Vision. Sorry. Vision.
Vision.
That's his name. I was like, I can't think of it at all. Yes, I do. I agree, man. I feel like that's what's important. I mean, we have to come to a society based on people, and that's the most important thing in the whole world. Each individual human is more valuable than any machine or any amount of money. And I work in a job where I feel like, I work with humans every day, and sometimes I don't feel like these are valued humans by certain, our governments and place and things like that. So it can be sad sometimes, but to try to advocate as much as you can for these people. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't feel like I've ever looked down on anybody because they worked a certain job. As long as you're working and making some money for yourself, that's great. And if you're not working, then hey man, if you're not having to work and you're somehow getting by, it's good too, but I don't think any job I've ever felt like was better. There seemed to be something more glamorous and more fun, but I mean, working in a restaurant can be great. It can be fun. It can be, great to fill people up and give people good food. And you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't have to be something that's, oh, you work at this restaurant, so you're a low life, deserve minimum wage or, and minimum wage. I mean, dude, our money's all been so inflated that it doesn't matter if we're making $50 or $60 an hour at this point.
I remember making $4 an hour.
Man, I was trying to think what was the lowest I've ever made. It was probably like 5 or 6.
$4.25.
Like, oh man, it might have been $4.25.
That was me.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember that number.
Okay, so a lot of what we're talking about is, I just want to point out, this is philosophically equivalent to conversations in law, money, academia,
right,
religion.
Yep.
What do how do we organize and manage these areas of our lives such that we are not excluding any particular class or person, and we are providing an overall benefit to the whole, or to the all, to the one, right? So I think if we getting into the root of this issue, and including automation throughout history, right?
Right. Yeah. Gotcha.
Through our history, through this iteration of Terran humanity, this really comes down to balancing light and dark in development. So if we have the dark in service to enriching the few, for example, right, we're going to make things so efficient that the people at the top make even more money, right?
Right. Or do things that infringe upon our freedoms.
Or do things,
like if you don't play the game right,
behave
we'll turn your electric car
or
off,
think
right?
a certain way, right? So
we'll turn your smart meter off. You don't have power to your house anymore. Like those things, nobody's rights and privileges, not even privileges, the things that we're all as living human beings are given our God rights to, and to have, and to need, and to water and food, and to the resources. All those things should never be infringed upon.
Right. So you have the social engineering side of this thing, right? And then we have the light, right, which is that net benefit, the cognitive growth, the connectedness, the et cetera. Can AI be a part of a balanced growth in humanity in those respects? I think it can. We'll get into some thesis here. Oh, wow.
I told you, man. If you try to read every word,
that goes quick.
Go through it. We're sitting at just under an hour, so we'll go for a little bit more.
Well, all right. So we're just touching on some elements of the next kind of major subject here, which is the spiritual or quantum dilemma.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, this is really just one piece of that whole umbrella subject.
Probably my biggest one. I feel called to talk about is the spiritual dilemma of all this. I mean, and I'll start it. I'll kick it off, because when you talk about that, you talk about people on social media, and every picture is a filter, and every person looks so good and that, perfect and skin's flawless and everything. And that's all great, man. But at the end of the day, like when you get 100 likes or 1,000 likes because, that picture looks so perfect and pristine, and then a real one of yourself doesn't, what does that do to your humanity, your self-esteem? That the real raw you isn't good enough somehow, that some AI generated filter makes you better, makes you get more likes, makes you have more popularity. And then what happens when you actually go outside to, a party or something like that? And then, people don't see, they think they have this, altered view of what you should look like, and you don't look like that. And then, they're disappointed in something. So, and that's going to really take a shot at your self-esteem. So those kind of things. And I feel like just the natural, laws of the universe get affected here a little bit when we introduce AI and artificial intelligence into the world. And so I think it is something, definitely to be careful of, those fake pictures and the fake people. And like I said, we were talking earlier about get it on there and creating some masterpiece. And, I know for Ascension Works TV, we have some incredible pictures that we use, and some of them are AI generated. And I'm super thankful because I don't think any of us could paint any of that. But, there are people who do paint, and they paint a picture that would look like that would take, I don't know, days, weeks, maybe, to do some of these artistic works. And I wonder, does that put someone like that out of business? Or we could have bought, someone's artwork or an image that someone actually painted, rather than asking this app to make us, a cool picture that we can use. So
to your point, are we talking about paint? Or are we talking about Photoshop? A digital paint.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we wouldn't have to look back very far to see the progression. AI speeds things up. So now I can just offer a prompt, right? Whereas before I was collecting different elements and layering them and brushing, and doing a lot of stuff digitally, but it was a lot faster than working with oil or water, for instance, right?
Yeah, it is faster.
So,
and I think that's the key thing, is everything in AI seems convenient, easy.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And it makes your life easier and more convenient. And, and I feel like to some extent, sometimes having an easy life, for everything to be super convenient, can be something that hurts us in the end. Because guess what? Guess now we go to the convenience store and pick up our groceries, and nobody knows how to grow any of that stuff. No one knows how to turn the soil and rotate crops. And, if somebody's done for us. So once the prices go up because all the plants have been burned down and now everything's super expensive, but we can't do those things. And if it goes up too high, then a lot of us won't even be able to eat. So I feel like, that saying that easy times create easy folks. I mean, that's something we have to, really have to think about. Like how much is the convenience worth? Is it worth to not know how to make preservatives? Is not how to grow your own food and, make your own clothes and those kind of things, so we can just go buy it for a cheap price.
Yeah. Yeah. So to understand how AI plays into the spiritual war or this dilemma, I think it's helpful just to understand the motives behind the technocracy or AI in general. The raison d'etre. AI is a means of control. In the eyes of its handlers or of its creators, it's a means of executing some sort of fundamental, either a process to make things easy in a small scale or in a large scale. It's means of controlling massive change, right? Influencing, informing, guiding, somehow bringing a group into some sort of set of behaviors that wasn't, that's different from what was before, right?
Right. Yeah.
By comparison, we have the Akashic or the social memory complex or the connected conscience, right? We humans are connected in ways that allow us to learn from each other without having, right? This is, I won't get into some of the proof behind this, but we are now in a time and space where we can see the artificial equivalent to what humans have had for many, many thousands of years, right? Let's stay cognizant of that. Let's discern. Let's be critical thinkers. It's not hard for an expert to look through the output from a large language model. And I'm quoting, Jill Nephew, a behavior scientist who's been on the circuit for AI on various outlets. It's not hard for an expert to see ChatGPT output as essentially a word salad.
Yeah.
Right. So someone who's really done the research in a specific area can identify the constraints within which ChatGPT is working to produce an answer that sounds trustworthy, that sounds thorough, that we can echo to somebody else, and that person's going to go, wow, without any real context. It's believable. It's trustworthy.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
So if you don't know enough about it, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not thoroughly researched like a human.
Right. And it may be just a conversation starter. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it could be, when it has more access and they're able to, quickly and fast pick up new things and be able to, find things all over the world in different places.
Sure.
Imagine it could be, instantaneous.
Yeah. I raise this as to offer some meat behind the theory that the motives the motives are constrained. They are of a service to self nature. And secondly, that technology does not create; it emulates. It can derive. It can offer an optimized collection of responses that sound complete, but it's up to us, and it's up to an expert who is interpreting that output to accept it as a data point and apply normal, highly developed cognition to bring in context, to bring in a deeper understanding, to know where to peel back and look further. So this, I know we're out of time.
We're not out of time. I mean, you're good. You're good. We can go as long as we want to. We're not going to go too long.
Anyway, so there's a lot to cover here.
But as far as the spiritual aspect, I mean, just the meat and bones of that. Like, I mean, if you really honestly think about it, they got us from the beginning on this. We're interacting, especially even now, we're interacting with robots. I mean, my daughter in there has robot unicorns and robot dogs, and they walk around and they bark and they make all kinds of noises. And I was talking to you about this earlier. It's interesting because it just looks like a stuffed unicorn, but ultimately you pull the skin off that thing and it's a robot that walks around. And when I saw her the other day, just hugging it and loving it, oh my God, I love this robot unicorn. And she didn't say that, but she said unicorn. And I'm like, man, I think about taking the skin off that thing, and I know it's a robot, and it's got bells and whistles and moving parts, and it's it runs on batteries, and some of these cars have remotes and things like that. And I mean, we're literally hugging and playing with these robots, and these robots are really, and sometimes more attractive than the dog or something that doesn't have the bark and the robot movements and the walking and the
batteries
and the batteries and everything like that. And it's crazy, like it gets your attention really fast. And then when this thing dies out, she's really sad. She's really mad. Got to get batteries, Dad. We got to get batteries. But the other toys that are probably her most, the favorite right now are these just regular stuffed animals. And those are the ones that say, I'm a puppy and I'm this and all these things. And so the imagination is far more on fire than obviously when we read a book, than when we watch television, when we play with stuffed animals over robots. We create those sounds and we create those things in our mind. And, it's just, I don't even think we're really conscious and aware of that aspect in general. Is like we're really getting involved in interacting with these things from the get-go, and I didn't even think about that until we had this topic, which I think is one of the great things about doing a podcast like this, is to really get my mind going and thinking about how this is affecting my life. And really it affects my life in more ways than I can ever imagine, from my car to my kids to, could I lose my job because, someone is able to do the things that I do from a computer, or from an artificial standpoint. So I think that's something we really need to be aware of. And like again, our technology is kind of surpassed that of our humanity at this point. We need to catch up. We care about others, and why do people want to play with shiny robots toys than these other toys? And just be careful, everything in moderation, and don't just throw them off the deep end. Every animal's got to be this super cool thing. No, use your imagination, play, draw. Sometimes draw over an iPad, book over a movie, you know what I mean? And those things get our brains really going. So I think when it comes to easy, when it comes to, convenient, when it comes to what's flashy and bright lights and stuff, sometimes that's that thing that leads us down to zombie life. And sometimes we're not really interacting with people anymore. We don't even look at people anymore. We don't interact with, our families and our coworkers and everything else, unless it's on a screen or, something like that. So
yeah, no, you raise a very good point. And, this is why I never really replaced the batteries in my kids' toys.
Probably smart,
That's when they were younger. It's the imagination, that connection with the personification of that toy that really brings out the value of so much.
Let's keep move on, because we're going to be short on time. I know you got some things that you want to wrap it up with.
Wrapping up the spiritual quantum dilemma. I see AI, the end game. We hear a little bit about transhumanism, artificial general intelligence, and the perceived threat that it brings to managerial roles in the industry. We have part of the end game. I see the polarized evolutionary pathways, right? We have right brain dominant and left brain disconnected. This is another Jill Nephew observation. The usurpation of divine faculties by technology. In other words, we're going to get lazy, right? That's the perceived threat. We're going to become disconnected. We're going to be completely reliant. It's a crutch. It's no longer just a tool to improve the quality or speed of an output. It's now the primary crutch. So on the spiritual side, we have the social memory complex, and I'm using a lot of one term there, but the end game in spiritual progression is transcendence. It's intuition. It's spiritual growth, connectedness, awareness, and well-coordinated brain hemispheres. In other words, a fully developed human, right? With all of its faculties. So we have now the different motive sets. And again, it comes back to, let's use our discernment. Let's be critical thinkers. Let's never forget that an AI piece, an artificially generated piece of information, is one data point by which we make decisions. This is why there's always going to be a human involved in most critical life safety decisions, or in a defensive posture out on a battlefield, right? You're never going to. I suspect we will not see on this planet an AI dominant, or an AI claiming dominion over any part of the human race.
Not if we have anything to do with it, right?
Right?
Yeah.
And I think we're getting help on that one as well.
Yeah.
So with this in mind, I think we can move into the kind of the well, I think we can get into my final two theses.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay,
yeah, let's roll.
There's a whole risk analysis we can get into. I similar to environmental impact reports and process hazard analyses or failure mode effects in the physical world. There is room for a thorough risk assessment according to all the different terms and by which we interact with technology, right?
Sure.
Okay, we're going to skip all that.
Skip it. We'll do it again, though. We'll do it again. I told you, man, an hour comes and goes real quick.
All right, two theses. Number one, I suspect that the degree of influence of AI over we, the people, individually or as a group, I suspect that the degree of influence is going to be a measure of our self-determined sovereignty. Hear me out on this. Sovereignty has multiple facets in technology, law, money, academia, and mind, body, spirit. We are sovereign in all those ways, as long as we identify ourselves as such, as an individual, as a group. And speaking of those layers, there are sets of moral values and ethical standards at play in a new earth technology technocracy or technology ecosystem.
Sure.
So if we couple this subject along with many others about where this planet is going, where we, the people, are going, where I, as an individual, where the collective consciousness is going, I suspect that in a new earth scenario, we will be claiming sovereignty in terms of moral values and ethical standards in technology development. This will determine how and to what extent, what the magnitude and characteristics are of the influence of AI on our development. If we can claim our sovereignty in all those different ways, keep faith and optimistic, use loving intent in those algorithms, and essentially optimize for a service to others social norm, AI will continue to be a tool for the growth and expansion of humanity or we individuals.
Yeah.
That's my first thesis. Number two.
Do it.
Okay. Artificial intelligence, I suspect when we lift ourselves up to the highest transcendent point of view, artificial intelligence, I suspect, is a tool of the gods to, and I say gods plural, essentially to support the polarized nature of the Schoolhouse Earth scenario that we're in currently, such that we have, from a negative or a fallen angel perspective, we have means of control and enrichment. But from a positive or ascendant perspective, we have decision aids, we have rote tasks that are taken over that allow us to spend time with family or specialize in our career or what have you, right? And we have a tool that will help us aid ourselves, that will aid us in our own awareness paths. So if I can ask questions of ChatGPT that are not bounded to secular sciences or to a certain agenda, if I can approach some of the more esoteric subjects or the mysteries of humanity or the universe, I suspect that the likes of ChatGPT will be very useful for the next generation. And then we have a benign perspective or a transcendent perspective above polarity, where I suspect AI will be an aid and a challenge for the growth and refinement of the physical realm en masse. I don't see AI as a threat, knowing that it's in use elsewhere, and ultimately it is I suspect a tool for the growth and development, further technical and spiritual development of the physical realm. So, and seeing that we are in a mass ascension window here on this planet, I think the timing is no coincidence. So
absolutely.
that's my second thesis. This is why I'm supremely optimistic about our relationship with AI. I think we will achieve a balance. It will be clear and concise. We have a yin and yang connection with technology by way of this sort of natural or um, uh, this natural interface where we can just offer a prompt and it's going to give back information in an easy and integrable way.
Yeah, I agree. But I think I'm Gemini, so I think both. I think I see both polarities, the positive and negative be viable at the same time. You know, like there are going to be people who use it to the greatest good for creating things and making life easier for some people, making, you know, medical devices, whatever. And then there's going to be people who are going to, you know, steal your photos off of your social media and create a version of your kid and, you know, make a voice and, you know, become the ultimate scam and scam people out of their mind because they think their kid's kidnapped or something. Both are definitely uses of a tool. And the thing about tools is like, you know, a gun is a tool, and there's a lot of people who hunt and who sport and, you know, have lots of guns and no one ever gets hurt or killed or anything. And those people, a lot of times people like that would think, you know, I couldn't see why anybody would do anything else with it other than to, you know, food for your family, for fun, for sport, for target practice, whatever. And then there's some people who are going to go shoot up an entire movie theater because there's something, you know, there's a missing piece inside, or they've been convinced to think certain things. And that's a tool. The thing about AI is, you know, probably kill a couple dozen people with a gun at most at one time before somebody's going to end that process. But AI is something that we could subliminally check an entire civilization or a culture or countries to think and to feel certain ways and to have certain agendas. And so I hope that we do, and I think the way we avert this is to find that sovereignty, like you said, within ourselves, to get back our own power, to take your own power back. And each individual person doing that really does have a massive amount of influence on the world by really taking back your own sovereignty and not allowing anyone or any entity to take advantage of us, to lie to us, cheat us, steal. And as we start to do that, I think we don't allow our governments to do that to us. We don't allow, you know, politicians and things like that. But we've got to have that integrity, that 100% honesty, love for ourselves and our neighbor, and implement that every day. And that will just, you know, vibrate out into a society that looks like that. I would say the majority of people create a collective consciousness that a president reflects that back to us, what we are, you know.
Yeah,
our politicians reflect that. So we've got to really be careful in our own dealings and how we talk to each other and all those kind of things. But
I think next time we can get into a little bit more about how random number generators and experiments and, you know,
that's a good point.
Responding to the common conscience.
We have to say it though. What you're talking about, the number generators, the Global Coherence Project, and Dalai Lama was asked, like, when these things are flipping just random ones and zeros, and then something like Princess Diana or 9/11 happens, and these things start to flip in a certain pattern, that's obviously no longer random because emotions influence these number generators. And they said, therefore are the number generators conscious? And the Dalai Lama thought for a while, and he goes, if you think they're conscious, they're conscious.
Yeah.
That shit blew my mind.
Quantum computing, quantum mechanics.
Right.
Yeah. There are a lot of, anyway.
Makes you think about the Avatar and said the rock sees more, you know what I mean? Like, how much does a rock actually see and collect data? You know what I mean? But interesting subjects. Morgan, I want to thank you immensely for being here. I am so grateful to have cool friends to talk about cool things. And it's an incredible opportunity. And I just want to tell everyone out there on Ascension Works Television, on YouTube, wherever you might find this, on Rumble or something somewhere, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, for supporting us. It's an honor to be able to do these shows. And a big shout out to Mike. We love you, man. And the Ascension Works TV platform is probably the one I want to ring the most, and to say, you know, it's a small little donation a month, but I really feel like putting our money where our mouth is supporting platforms, apps, grocery stores, people who are doing the right things. And where intention goes, energy, where energy flows, attention goes, energy goes, attention goes, energy flows, wherever, all the things. It's important, man. Where we buy from, who we promote, where we go. And so a big thank you to Mike for putting us on here and sharing with you guys tonight. And I just, again, I want to thank every single one of you for being here, for doing your work on this planet at this time right now. It is so important. It is so big. This incredible transition journey that we're on this planet and this school, it's huge. And we are about to blossom in mental capabilities, emotional, physical, and spiritual capabilities. And I just want to thank every single one of you guys out there for doing your work, because it is important. Your integrity, your love, your honesty, those things to do when nobody's looking, to do the right things when nobody's looking, because that will 100% change our world when we do the things when nobody's watching. So tonight I want to say the divine sees, honors, and recognizes the divine in each and every single one of you. Namaste.